like I said, today should be review. There's a couple things I want to emphasize and want to point out to you, but it shouldn't really be too bad. Okay, so we're solving inequalities. Let's first of all talk about what an inequality is. Okay, literally the word in that prefix. What does that mean? Not. So it's not equal. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a bunch of situations where it's not. And in math, it's not necessarily equal, so we qualify a little bit. If you want to take a picture of this screen, you are welcome to do that. If you don't need to write any of this down, you don't have to, okay? You know all these symbols. Now, that being said, these two at the top, these might be newish to you, but they probably aren't. But those are really the inequality symbols that we're going to work with the most, okay? And today we're going to work with these the most. I just don't like excluding these two because those are two that we will also see. Not equal to, the equals with the slash through it, and then the squiggly equals approximately equal to. Okay. So over here I have less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. So it's sort of like the half equal sign underneath. I know you guys like to think of it as it being underlined, but the reality is it's a half of an equal sign. Okay. This shouldn't be new to you. Let's talk about graphing inequalities. Okay. Now, I've given all four of the different examples. See, whenever we talk about inequalities, we're talking about a range of numbers, a set of numbers. Okay. When it's greater than 4, that means every number, forever and ever, bigger than 4. Okay. And there's no way to actually write every number that is greater than 4. It's an infinite number of numbers. It never ends. So in a situation like this, we would put an open circle because 4 is not actually part of it. When we say greater than 4, that means 4 is not part of that solution. It's everything greater than 4. So we open the circle up to indicate it kind of starts here, but it doesn't actually count yet. That's why when we go to something like this, greater than or equal to, we fill in the dot and say, hey, 4 is part of the solution. So that's why it's filled in. And again, this is stuff you guys know. The opposite, of course, for less than, it goes the other direction. Because a number line, the numbers get smaller as we move left. On a number line, the numbers get bigger as we go right. That's why the arrow points in the direction that it points. With the or equals to, whether they're greater than or less than, that's when we have our point filled in to indicate that we are including that value as part of our solution set. When it's not greater than or less than, with the not with the or equals to, that's when we're going to have what's called the open circle. It indicates our starting place, but that is not part of the solution set. So you can copy and paste what's on top and then make the alterations as necessary, right? Because it's really all the same format. The less thans I put in red, the greater thans I put in blue. Just switch the words in and out, okay? So don't get hung up when I switch off this, which I'm going to do right now. So, like the simple inequality. The key thing here is solve it like an equation. So go ahead and do that. Most of the time, it's going to say solve and graph. Now, I don't want you to graph yet because I want to talk specifically about what your graphs need to look like. All right, obviously I subtract 4 from both sides. X less than 3. How many had that? Gosh, I hope so. Okay. So now when we graph, one of the things that some of you will try to do that we're not doing, this is not happening. You're not writing and creating your own number line and drawing it out and putting little tick marks that are kind of not spaced apart properly and that kind of thing. You have several options. One, in Notability, if you want to use the graph paper that's already built in for you, you can use that. However, in the digital world that we live, there are number lines on Google that you can take a picture of, insert it into your homework, and use over and over and over again. That's probably what you should do. Okay? I'm going to also provide a number line that I like to use that you'll see over and over again in on your tests and later on in the year when we need number lines. Whatever one you pick, use it and stick with it. Okay? Don't create your own number lines. If you're so hard-headed that you're going to do that, then you better do it on the graph paper so that you know it's perfectly evenly spaced apart and numbered, and then you want to copy and paste that every single time. Don't draw that over and over again. That free-handing a number line is not a thing that we're going to do in here. Are there any questions about that? Have I been perfectly clear? Okay, good. So that's what my graph is going to look like. Okay? Here's what's important. I think for you, that helps you the most to determine which direction the arrow goes, you want to have the variable on the left, because then the arrow lines up with the inequality symbol. I think sometimes if you would have done this problem and you had it written like this, because those are the same thing, okay, this says x is less than 3, this says 3 is greater than x, but notice, and I know some of you were talking about the alligator thing, okay, it still opens up to the 3 either way, even though this is a less than sign and this is a greater than sign, it still points to the x. I think in order to avoid confusion for you, in general, if you put the variable on the left, your arrowhead will line up with the inequality symbol. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do that. If you have it this way, just know that it always is based off the variable. So in this case, you'd kind of want to read it backwards. X less than 3, so then you know to go to the left. So what this really means is that every value less than 3, not including 3, less than 3, is part of the solution. Any value that you could pick on this green line, as far down as you could go, and if you plugged it into the inequality, it will check. It'll be correct. It'll be a true inequality statement. Okay? Again, simple, basic stuff that you know. The other thing that I will tell you, as you work through notability, and something that I kind of illustrated here, if my number line is black, don't make your arrow black. Like literally you have one click and you can change the color of the whole thing. Make your number line a different color from your arrow. And I don't care what color you pick. Okay? Just make them different. Use the highlighter even better, because like here you can still see the black line through the green line, right? So I recommend using that highlighter. Okay? And I also recommend drawing it on the line like I did. Because of those capabilities that you have through notability, there's no reason to not do that. Okay? I know we used to use the same color and you jump over the line and above the line and draw the arrow. There's no reason to do that. We have the capability of through notability with the highlighter, so we don't need to bother with that. So for example, I only put the ones that I needed. I always like to put 0 on there, just so I can kind of get a gauge of how far apart they are. How many numbers you actually put in there, I'm going to kind of leave that up to you. Don't put just one number. Give me at least 2 numbers on the number line. Label at least 2 numbers.
So like evens or odds?
I don't care.
0
okay.
And the other number.
That's what I do. Now, eventually, when we get to the video that you're going to watch for Friday, you're going to have at least 3 numbers, and you'll see why on Friday too. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next thing.
So you're recommending
you're about to see a number line that has 20 numbers on it. So this is the thing. If you go to Google and you grab one that's already labeled, then you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to create your own. Just grab one from Google, screenshot it, insert the image, and you're good to go. And you got all the numbers already on it. It's already labeled. Okay? All right. So hopefully you recall that when you're dealing with inequalities, there is one special case that we have to be aware of. Okay? And we need to make sure that whenever we work through inequalities, that you have this sort of heightened sense of awareness because of this case. And sometimes what that means is you reverse the direction of the inequality sign. Okay? And there's one case where that happens. And you have to be prepared when you enter into inequalities for that case. Because for a moment, everything changes. And then it's just back to normal. Once you take care of the special case, you go back to doing what you were doing before. Okay? So what is it? What is the special case?
When it's a negative.
When what's a negative?
When you have to divide the variable.
So if you have to divide by a negative or
Multiply.
multiply by a negative. So that's a special case. When you multiply or divide both sides by a negative number, that inequality symbol has to flip over. So let's get an example, okay? Go ahead and do this problem. Okay, so I have negative 3y plus 5 less than 23. Go ahead and do this problem. Solve it, graph it. What's my first move here?
Subtract 5.
Subtract 5, okay? So, when I subtract 5, I get negative 3y. I know it does because it's cut off.
Hey, we got a spider back. I go get
It's okay. We live where there's bugs. Negative 3y less than 18. What's my next move?
Divide negative 3.
Okay, so when you divide by negative, that needs to flip. So, when I divide by negative 3, notice here that I changed the color of the inequality sign because it flips over to greater than.
Y is greater than negative.
So y is greater than negative 6. Okay, and then you go ahead and do your graph of your number line, and you're good to go. How many had that right? Good. Try one more. Go ahead and do one more. One more. A couple things that you need to be careful of. Okay, notice the variable is on the right side of the inequality. That's one thing that's different from this problem from the other ones. The other problem is you in decimals and division. Okay, I'm going to show you something that'll make it probably a little bit easier, but ultimately you have to be able to divide a decimal. It's not a big deal. You need to do it longhand, long division, then that's what you need to do. Let's take a look here because there's a couple things that you might want to do, okay? Hey, listen up, please. Listen up, please. Okay. If you choose to leave it in the same form that it's in, that's okay. To avoid that confusion, some of you might decide, you know what, I really need the variable on the left. Okay? Like we said earlier, if you flip it, then you also have to flip the inequality so that it points and opens the same way. So if you want to put the variable on the left at the beginning to work through it, you can. I'm not saying that you have to, okay? Did anybody do that?
I did.
Okay, so a few of you did. I won't go through it that way because not enough of you went through it that way, but let's kind of work from there, okay? So when I have what's going to be my first move here?
You divide by negative.
Negative. Okay, so when I divide by a negative, you have to make sure that you flip the inequality over.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, now, those of you who are struggling to do 12 divided by negative 0.3, I want to show you something in case you did not know this already. Okay, you can literally move the decimal over to just make it a 3. But you can't just do it on the bottom. You have to do it on the top. So where is the decimal on 12?
After a 0.
After the 2, so I move it over and I have to add a
0.
So what is 120 divided by 3? Negative 40. Okay? So those are things that you can do to make your life a little bit easier. So the reality is this says negative 40 is less than or equal to p. So when you graph, you got to look at it from the perspective of p. P greater than or equal to negative 40. So the line is actually going to go to the right. So if you drew your line to the left, it's going the wrong direction because you went off of this instead of off of where the P is. That's where flipping it around might be helpful for you. Okay, ultimately what you should have had. Okay?
Yes, remember it should be solid.
And notice I said think 120 divided by negative 3. The dot at negative 40 should be filled in because it is or equal to. and then it goes to the right. How many had that right?
I did.
Okay, very good. Okay.